which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we think we've figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. We come here to learn more about being in relationship together, how to listen to our own hearts, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion with one another. I want to extend a warm welcome again to everyone here in the sanctuary and to all those gathered online today. If you're a visitor, either in person or online, we are glad you're with us, and we invite you to stay after the service to get acquainted. We welcome your questions and look forward to getting to know you. We do have a few announcements before our service begins. The care team is hosting a care circle this week. The Solo Souls Matter conversation will be Wednesday, March 8th at 10:30 a.m. on Zoom. The care team invites those of us who live alone to gather and share what works for us in living a connected and meaning-filled life. See the Reach for more details and the Zoom link. UU Summer Camp for singles, families, couples, and groups of friends registration for Camp Unistar in northern Minnesota is now open. Camp Unistar runs weekly programs with themes like singing, photography, yoga, climate justice, friendship, and humor. You can find out more and register at www.campunistar.org. Next Sunday, join Reverend Sara for our service, Saying Yes, saying an authentic, courageous yes as individuals and as a community is sacred, scary work. What do we risk when we say yes? And what do we lose when we don't? Join Reverend Sara and Worship Associate Maddie Dorr for this reflection on who you and we are called to be in the world. Let us move into worship, willing to be authentic with each other, honest with ourselves, and open to connection in all of its forms. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northfield.
Soaringly beautiful. Good morning, everyone. I am the Reverend Sara Smalley, minister of UUFN. I use she, her pronouns, and it is so good to be together this morning. Our opening words are from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. Tell me about a miracle you have seen and the way the divine has spoken to you. If you believe in prayer or God or angels, tell me if it matters. And what if everything is a miracle, because it is stunning how life exists at all? How do I get along with my neighbor who does not seem to want me to exist? And what if I don't believe in the inherent worth and dignity of everyone after all? Tell me about mercy and kindness and why people hurt each other so much, and if courageous love really is enough. There are more questions than answers in this life, and we do not promise in this place a sure certainty, easy solutions, or quick salvation, but only the hard and yet still healing work of wrestling through it together, learning how to keep these hearts open to truths still being revealed even when they are broken. Learning how to find here seeds of grace and how to keep loving this still beautiful world. Come, let us worship together.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Each Sunday when we gather, we bring this symbol to life together. Its flame illuminates this moment, calling our attention to the path of hope and justice. Please join me in speaking the words in your order of service and on the screens as we light the chalice, the symbol of our faith. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to learn what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn. Gathered here, we'll sing it through 2 times.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. I have always loved that lyric. We never really know what is going to happen in worship because worship is always a co-created experience. In preparation for worship, I spend significant time thinking about each element of the service, each pause, each inflection, crafting every word of my sermon. And then on Sunday mornings, the Spirit moves and the script comes to life, and it never goes according to plan in the very best way. When we all take that first inhale together and then exhale singing the first word of a hymn, we breathe life into this shared experience. Spirit, draw near. Today, that worship is a co-created experience is all the more true. Today, I do not have a finely crafted sermon. Rather, I will be answering your questions in real time for this second annual question box service. Question Box Sunday is a tradition that goes back to at least the 1970s in Unitarian Universalist congregations. Curiosity and inquiry are a part of our tradition. Today at UUFN, we launched this month's theme of the path of vulnerability. So this seemed like the right time for this service here. I think there is vulnerability both in asking and in answering questions. A question says something about the person asking, an answer someone about the person answering, and the process of asking and answering something about the relationship between the two. So today, I am modeling vulnerability. I guarantee that I will come up with much smarter answers on the drive home and much, much smarter answers 2 or 3 days from now when I'm still thinking about this. But the point today is not for me to be as smart as possible, but rather for us to trust that what we create together will not be perfect, but that it will be authentic and connecting and will spark more questions and more answers and more relationship. This worship service is about asking and exploring questions as a spiritual act. I will also be modeling healthy vulnerability. As I said last year, this is not a time to play stump the minister. You could ask me a question about astrophysics, but you will be disappointed in my answer unless you want to hear spiritual metaphors about the cosmos, not scientific facts. So if there is a question that I cannot answer or that is inappropriate, I will set that one aside. I'm not worried about that happening, but I think it's also good to name boundaries when talking about vulnerability. Today is a time to ask questions about Unitarian Universalism, theology, religion, spiritual practices, life, what you most wonder about or struggle with. And in that spirit, I will answer your questions off the top of my head and from the bottom of my heart. The logistics. For those in the sanctuary, you should have gotten a note card in your order of service, or there's a few scattered about as well. If you are in the sanctuary and have a question, write it on your index card. Please write as legibly as you can. You will have time to think about what questions you'd like to ask, although I already have 5 people who have turned in their note cards. We'll do 2 rounds of collecting note cards today in the sanctuary. If you're done with yours by the time the offertory basket goes by, simply put it in the offertory basket. If you need more time, the ushers will do a second round of collecting after the reading later in the service. So try and get them in the offertory basket, but for those of you who need more processing time, we'll do a second round collection later. If you are on Zoom, you can type your question into chat whenever you would like. If you would like to ask your question without the whole group seeing it and only me seeing it, you can send a chat directly to me instead of to the whole group. In order to send a message only to me in the chat box, click on the down arrow where it says everyone, select Reverend Sara Smalley, and then that will send a message directly to me. So go ahead and start writing if you haven't already. I can't wait to see what you all are curious about.
Our offertory is one way we make our care for the world tangible. Instead of turning away from hardship, we do what we can to care for others. Our Share the Plate donations this month go out to our neighbors in Northfield and Faribault who struggle with food insecurity, who live with the challenges of addiction and mental health crises, those experiencing homelessness, and more. Our Share the Plate recipient is Community Action Center. Community Action Center's vitality depends on the community, from volunteers to donations to program-specific support, so that CAC can continue to meet our neighbors' basic needs. You may donate by cash, check made out to UUFN with offering basket in the memo line or online from our website. And a reminder to also put the note cards with your questions on them in the basket if you have them completed. You are invited to give generously and joyfully as you are willing and able. In this spirit, we now gratefully accept the offering.
As we move into our time of centering, the ushers can bring up your questions. Thanks. Oh, John and Freya have one too. Thanks. Okay, this is good. Thank you. As we move into this time of centering and slow down and pause and allow our hearts to catch up with us, I invite you to allow yourself an unhurried, unclenched breath. Soften your gaze or close your eyes. Relax your shoulders and find ease in this moment. As we rest in this greater love, we use our chalice flame to light our candles of community. Our first candle today is a special flame. Today we light a birthday candle for UUFN. 57 years ago tomorrow, this congregation met for the first time. March 6th, 1966, at 10:30 a.m., a group of about a dozen seekers held their first service at the Dilley Convalescent Center Auditorium. Toyo Masafuz, an assistant professor of sociology and anthropology at Carleton College, was the guest speaker discussing, I love this, the functions and limitations of reason in religion. The functions and limitations of reason in religion. Sounds like a great precursor to a question box service 57 years later. Happy birthday to UUFN, and with gratitude to those dozen souls and all the dear souls since then who made this very moment possible. I know. And I am looking especially at Eve and Clark. We now light a candle as a blessing for the wider world. Coming up this week on Wednesday is International Women's Day. This is a day set aside to dare to imagine a gender equal world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination that celebrates gender expression. And this, Last Monday, a woman was violently attacked in Minneapolis because she is transgender. State legislatures are banning drag shows and gender-affirming healthcare and reproductive healthcare, and so this light proclaims women's rights are human rights. Trans people are whole, holy, and beloved. We will join together in fighting for a world in which all of us are free and all of us can thrive. We know, too, that the details of our daily lives are sacred and important. We now light a candle for the simple joys that are sustaining us. And we light another candle in honor of the sorrows and hardships we might be carrying. It's been spoken aloud, and we move towards a time of silence. May the truth of your heart be reflected in these flames. Spirit of life and love, why is there something instead of nothing? Why do wishes sometimes come true when spoken beneath the stars? Why, after millions of years of life on earth, does death still sting? Why is it so hard for people to learn how to love one another? Why does my heart laugh with the first flower in spring? Questions rise up within our souls, born of fear and delight, sorrow and confusion. Questions live with us, shaping our choices and our search for truth. Help us to embrace our questions on the path of vulnerability as they point our way to where we long to go. Blessed be, and amen.
Our reading today is from The Beauty of Questions by Karen Hornifer-Ginter. I love the idea of loving questions, seeing the potential beauty that they contain. I don't think we always give questions the time and attention they deserve, often mistaking them as being mere stepping stones to an answer. We also abuse questions in our everyday life, in our way of relating to them, presenting words under the guise of an inquiry, when in fact we're only trying to make a point. I know I'm guilty of this in my own home, asking my children if they've brushed their teeth or finished their homework or eaten all their dinner before moving on to dessert. Asking the dog if he shredded the paper towel in hopes that he'll admit his guilt. All these moments of undercover policing, but who am I really kidding? When used properly, questions have the potential to connect us to a world of another. A heartfelt "how are you?" or "how was your day?" can become the bridge that keeps us in relationship to the lives of those we love. Sometimes, too, questions create a bridge within ourselves, allowing us to hear what's going on at a deeper level. We know when we've encountered a question that has this potential because it stays with us, maybe for the day, maybe for our whole lives. It taps us on the shoulder to wake us up, or wiggles away in more deeply, or wiggles its way in more deeply, opening us up to seeing things in a new way. I still recall first encountering Judith Dirk's chorus of questions about how my life might have been different if there had been a sacred circle to step into. Mary Oliver asking me about my plans for this one wild and precious life. Oriah Mountain Dreamer wanting to know what I ache for and if I dare to dream of meeting my heart's longing. Angeles Aryan reminding me of the questions asked in some indigenous cultures. When did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? All these questions have remained close companions across the years.
Does anyone else have a question that they would like delivered up here? My plan during that reading was I was going to organize these into categories, and they are like so wide ranging and beautiful. We're just going to go with it. And I want to be very clear. I will not be able to answer all of these questions. Like a couple of them are sermons in and of themselves. Actually, shoot, I should have set it aside. One of the questions was, tell us about your call to become a minister. That is actually my saying yes sermon next week, because I said no for a very long time to that. So come next week and I'll answer that question. I also, so I'm just going to do these randomly, but beyond that. The first question that I saw was via Zoom, and it was this, and I love this as a first question. What is your quick and dirty answer to someone who asked, do you believe in God? All right, we're off here. So I would answer it with a question. What do you mean by God? Because mostly what people mean by God is not something that I believe in. I do not believe that there is an anthropomorphic deity who intervenes in human affairs. I am, however, comfortable with using the word God as a metaphor for like what happens in this space on Sunday mornings, about how my heart moves when I see, a sunset over a lake, that there is something that is so extraordinarily beautiful that I can use God as a metaphor for that. But I do not believe in a literal God. I want to also be very clear, that is my personal answer. That is not a Unitarian Universalist answer. So there are people for whom that answer works and for people for whom that answer does not work. I don't know if that was a quick answer, but the answer is kind of. All right, let's see. Next question. Do you think all people are born good, or are some simply bad and beyond redemption? Okay, it's hilarious that in my head I'm like, well, here's how I want to nuance that question. So I'm even like questioning the questions, which feels very you. I would say all people are born loved or held by love. I believe that love is where we come from and love is where we return to. I also believe we are all born flawed. We are not born perfect. So we are born fully human into humanness. And so the way that we become either, more good, or that's not a good way to say it. If we have access to love, the goodness in our hearts is amplified. I think that is true when we are born and when we are 50 years old and throughout our lives. So I think that access to love is actually the essence of that question. And the question of, are some all bad and beyond redemption? I don't want to dismiss any human being. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't have boundaries for bad behavior, but I would not write off any human being. All right. Next one. Actually, there's a few of these. The top one and this next one are similar questions. What is the early history of the foundation reason for the Unitarian Church, and what is the early history of Unitarianism and the founders' theologies, ideas, religion, structure, etc. There are a bunch of UU history questions, which also is, of course, many, many sermons, or maybe a class. We should get together and chat more about this. So here's what I will say about Unitarian history, which I find interesting and important. After the time of Jesus, like the first few hundred years after Jesus's death, there were many Christianities. There was not one set belief. So there were Unitarian Christians, meaning they believed God was God and Jesus was human. There were Trinitarian Christians who believed in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, were all one thing. And they all, generally kind of hung out. It's maybe not, exact history. I don't have a footnote for that. But at the Council of Nicaea, Empire came in and said, no, there is going to be one Christianity, and it is a Trinitarian Christianity. And Unitarians are not only wrong, but dangerous to empire. And so Unitarians, that questioning thing that is in our spiritual DNA, were persecuted, actually were killed for their beliefs going forward. And they believed so deeply that God was God and Jesus was human. Jesus was something that we all are, divine and human simultaneously, that their ideas remained. They moved through Transylvania and into Europe and then across to the United States, and kept that essence of questioning and reason and looking to scriptures and asking about new truths throughout the years. I hope that answers the Unitarian specific question. And I think these were both specific Unitarian. There was also another question that if I draw it, I will set it aside and I'll answer it quickly. The other Universalists believed in universal salvation. They looked to the Bible and they believed that Jesus's sacrifice was so complete and God's love was so great that no one would be condemned to hell for eternity. Everyone was saved by love. There was always redemption, going back to that first question. No one was outside of the power of love and the scope of love. Unitarians and Universalists in the United States merged in 1961 to create a new religion, Unitarian Universalism. All right. Let's see. In working for UU's Soul Matters, what did you learn that you would like to know, but isn't like us to know, but isn't common knowledge? So, interesting question. So before and during seminary, I was the director of Soul Matters, which is the theme-based church curriculum that we use for worship, religious education, and small groups. And that year was, or those couple of years when I was working for Soul Matters, was absolutely fascinating for me because I got to travel around and meet with different UU churches. And I was constantly on calls with UU ministers and small groups and like, what do they want? And Soul Matters was just sort of really getting started at that point. And what I learned is people want to be connected to a wider community. So each of these congregations like it was doing all of this great work, and they wanted a sense of connection to something wider and deeper in the world of Unitarian Universalism. There was a hunger for spiritual depth, a hunger for justice work, a hunger for deep questioning, and that hunger for building Unitarian Universalist identity. And again, for all ages, starting with religious education, small groups, and worship. So to really have that integrated sense of Unitarian Universalist identity, which I'm not sure that was, I don't know if that's not common knowledge, but maybe what I want you to know is like, there are UUs all over who are doing this like beautiful community building that are different from UUFN, but have that same core of care and connection. I'm very hopeful about the future of our faith. So that is part of what I learned. Okay, another Zoom quote or a Zoom question. Do you have a personal relationship with a guardian angel? If so, how do you connect and relate? What a lovely question. I wouldn't use the phrase guardian angel. And I have talked about my mom some, who died a number of years ago. And I connect with her all the time. Like I'd love to think of her here now, like hanging out with y'all. During her, so I would consider her my guard. Like I do absolutely think like, what would my mom do? That is a part of how I move through the world. Part of the other question was, if so, how do you connect and relate? My mom was a hospice pioneer and a Unitarian Universalist humanist. So she had a very extensive theology of and experience with death. And so in her lifetime, she did not fear death, but she wrote a lot about her hopes for after death. As a humanist, she believed that when she died, there was not an afterlife. Other Unitarian Universalists believe differently. But she wrote a beautiful poem about how she hoped to, that her atoms would become flowers or birds. And so at her memorial service, I made a promise that I would always listen for her voice in birdsong. So I connect with my mom through birdsong and lots of other ways. The next question is one that I'm going to answer in my sermon next week. All right, I'm going to try to not edit these, even though I'll ask a question. Do you have any idea how UUs are doing internationally? So, no. However, I know that interestingly, there is a significant Unitarian Universalist presence in the Philippines because of some relational work that was done. And so I know that the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Philippines is thriving. I also this summer just planned a trip to Ireland, which I'm very excited about, but shifted my whole trip to Ireland so I could be in Dublin Sunday morning and worship at the Dublin Unitarian Church. So I'll let you know after that. I am there end of July and into early August. And I'm very excited about it. And also I'm hoping to meet with my colleague there, the minister there, who seems lovely. This question is spiritual metaphors about the marvels of the universe, please. The minister equivalent of the astrophysicist one. Okay, so for my first master's degree, which was me saying no to seminary, again, come next week and figure out when I finally said yes. My first master's degree, my thesis was entitled Constellations of Meaning, a Testament to the Cosmos, which used like the metaphors of the Bible and the metaphors of science to like talk about what the cosmological story is for, personal spiritual truth and social justice work. And I think maybe in May, our theme for the month is creativity. So I may do a whole sermon about spiritual metaphors about the marvels of the universe. So I could say a lot about that one. All right. I noticed a number of questions about Article 2. This one just says Article 2, question mark. Article 2, for those who aren't following, Unitarian Universalist denominational stuff, currently Unitarian Universalists have the 7 principles and 6 sources. The Article 2 Study Commission is rewriting those so that the 7 principles will no longer be a part of Unitarian Universalism. Instead, these 7 values with much different language could become a part of our faith. One of the other questions about this, I forget the exact wording, was how might it change Unitarian Universalism, which I think is a great question and probably goes back to what my answer was for the Soul Matters question. My sense with the revisions to Article 2 is that they will make us take ourselves more seriously, which I think is a good thing. They will take our the sense of Unitarian Universalism wanting to be like a reason-based religion. Like there's no world in which we set aside our reason and intellect as Unitarian Universalists, and that there is also other ways of knowing in the world. Our hearts, our spirits, our relationship, our senses. And so I think the revised Article 2 is a much more integrated human experience and integrated expression of what Unitarian Universalism might be. I am really hopeful for that. I will also say, for the 6 sources part of the Article 2 revision, I and a couple of other colleagues are working on some language revision to it. I think the sources section needs another sentence or 2 in the revision to really continue to capture the sense of direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder that is at the heart of Unitarian Universalist faith. So I mention that because I am also, critically reading Critical Reason, the Article 2 proposals, and really thinking about what it means for how I might be a minister in the future of our faith, and that it is a democratic process. These have not been voted on yet. Like, we get to be engaged in the future of our faith, which is exciting to me. This feels like a very energizing time to be a Unitarian Universalist. Since the last time these were revised was 1985, which I preached about a while ago, but I think it's time for us to name more fully who we are today. Okay, one more. It's going fast, y'all. I already answered something like that one. All things considered, with all you know or feel about being human, why do you think there is embodiment in the first place? I know. I'm like, do you believe in God? Why are we embodied? What's the future of our faith? This is so great. Like, we are embodied. I mean, this also goes to like the metaphors of the universe. Like, we are embodied because the universe exists, like because that Big Bang happened and creation has continued and then coalesces in your bodies and in this space. And that is like, I mean, I would say our bodies are actually the in some ways, the essence of who we are. Like, to be embodied is the way that we get to experience the universe, that embodiment itself is a spiritual practice, a spiritual opportunity, a particular way of being in the world. The other thing that this card said, this is not meant to be a stumper, rather a question that has existed for many years. So I do feel like it's a little bit of a stumper because I don't know exactly how to answer, but I just maybe I'll say this. I love the Sonia Renee Taylor, who writes a lot about like really radical self-love. When she is like, the only thing basically that humans can agree on is that we all have a body. Like, we don't know if there's a soul, we don't know about God, we don't know about the future, we don't know about anything. All we can agree on is that we all have bodies, which means that is where all justice work has to start. That the way bodies exist in the world is the fundamental reality of justice work, of spirituality, of, connecting to each other through senses and what we see as beautiful, and the end. I didn't actually have I didn't have an ending to that sentence. I'll have a good answer a week from now. So I got through maybe half of these. And so I'm like, if there's one that you were really hoping to hear, there's one about the cellist. I could definitely talk about that. Hope for You, UFN, lots of other amazing questions. Here is my invitation. I will look through these and I will categorize them, and they will absolutely influence future sermons. Like, that's sort of the point, that we get to continue to be in relationship about these questions. And if you have a question that didn't get answered and that you want to chat through, or you're like, your answer, I really want to talk to you about your answer, please make a meeting with me and let's chat more. I'd love to meet you on Zoom or for coffee or a phone call so we can continue to talk through these. So please don't feel like this is the end of the conversation about these, especially since I didn't get to answer very many. And there's a couple more on Zoom too, which are beautiful. So thank you for experiencing this, for co-creating this worship service together with me. Our closing hymn, written by a UU, poses more questions for us. What is the point of church? What is the point of Unitarian Universalism? What is sacred in this world? The lyrics in the hymn phrase this a little different, phrase these questions differently, but the seeking spirit shines through. Please rise in body or spirit for number 113, Where is Our Holy Church? You may be seated for our closing blessing. Questions rise up within our souls, born of fear and delight, sorrow and confusion. Questions live with us, shaping our choices and our search for truth. Help us to embrace our questions on the path of vulnerability as they point our way to where we long to go. May the questions that live in your heart inspire you to live the life you are called to live, clarifying your days, comforting your nights. As you share gifts with the world only you can give. May it be so, and amen. We join together in the words for the extinguishing of the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please rise, embody your spirit, and with your hands over your heart or holding the hand of one next to you, we sing words of blessing one to another. Go in peace.
So, but I thought